Welcome back to another UCL Fantasy video. Today I'll be talking about my team selection for Matchday 2, recapping on how I did in Matchday 1, and revealing my transfer plans for the upcoming deadline. There are 3 possibilities for me this week using the Wildcard, Limitless, or no chip at all, and I'll be revealing it in this video. There's also a chip strategy guide up on the channel, and also best Limitless and Wildcard team videos, which could also help you with your transfer plans. And be sure not to miss the deadline stream on Tuesday, which will be around 3:30 p.m. UK time tomorrow on the Tuesday, the 3rd of October. Be sure not to miss it. Our aim is to get to 21,000 subscribers by that deadline stream, and it's definitely possible thanks to your support. If you end up enjoying this video, smash the like button and subscribe for new. Share this video around with those that love FPL and UCL Fantasy. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. I scored 67 points in Matchday 1, and it was a huge downgrade from my start last season where I got 116 points, and my rank is definitely not where I would want it to be. But if we go through the team very briefly, ter Stegen kept a clean sheet and Barcelona were very comfortable victors. A 5-0 win over Antwerp at home, so not too many surprises there. David Raum didn't keep the clean sheet against Young Boys, but got an assist and also a ball recovery point, so pretty decent stuff by David Raum, and also Hendrik, so the Leipzig fullbacks did very well. Unfortunately, they play Man City next, and they are wounded animal. They do have Rodri, of course, in the Champions League, but I would expect Man City to bounce back, and it won't be an easy game for both teams involved. I also went for Joao Cancelo, and I saw a few rumours about Jules Koundé being benched, so I just didn't want to risk it, and I went for Joao Cancelo, but I would have preferred Koundé for the ball recovery potential, but Cancelo still managed to get a ball recovery point, whilst Jules Koundé picked up 2 ball recovery points. As for Denzel Dumfries, he was disappointing, but as I've always said with him, you're relying on attacking potential. He doesn't really recover that many balls as you see here, only 2 ball recoveries, but what you get from him is the goals and assists, and he's got plenty of them this season for both club and country, so I still like him in the long term. And in Matchday 2 of that tough fixture against Benfica, then you've got Xavi Simons, who picked up a 1-pointer but got a 3 additional points by getting the Man of the Match award, which has nothing to do with their fantasy prospects. It's just about who is the best player on the day, and Xavi Simons had a fantastic game, so very happy with him from that perspective, but maybe a bit disappointed by the lack of goals and assists in the Champions League so far. As for Joshua Kimmich, he picked up an assist very late on in the game, a thriller between Man United and Bayern Munich at the Allianz, and Joshua Kimmich did very well. A 6-pointer for a 6.5 million midfielder. You can't ask for too much more. The only one who did really well around that price and below is Casemiro, who scored a brace in that same fixture. Thuram was one of the biggest disappointments, and this was a reoccurring theme for me in Matchday 1. I had 4 players benched, and these are players that have started every single game in the league. Marcus Thuram, Fran Garcia, etc. All of them were benched, and that was a huge disappointment, and it also limited my potential in Matchday 1. Bellingham was looking like a poor captaincy choice on the Wednesday, but in the last minute, as he tends to do for Real Madrid, he scored the winner, and Real Madrid have a new hero in their midst, and Jude Bellingham is an almost essential asset at this point. He does face Napoli next. That's going to be a very tough game, but he's not someone you want to go without, and his ownership is 77% for a reason. He's an absolute bargain at this price, and once the prices start to change heading into Matchday 3, Jude Bellingham will be one of the very first players to go up in price, that's for sure. My front 3 was fairly disappointing actually. Only 1 goal between the 3. Angel Di Maria was also quite limited due to the red card that Antonio Silva picked up, and I think that kind of ruined his prospects for the game. Otherwise, I'm fairly confident he would have produced an attack in return. As for Lewandowski, he scored, and he probably got robbed off an assist in UCL Fantasy, but there you go. He's still got a 6-pointer. He got something, and he's the only forward I had who scored a goal, because Erling Haaland was only able to get an assist, and of course, only a 1-point difference between him and Lewandowski, but we all expected Haaland to go absolutely ballistic against Fernand Veseda, but it was Alvarez who stole the show, and he was the go-to Man City forward in Matchday 1. And then you look at my bench. Sommer got a save point but conceded to Real Sociedad. Inter Milan were able to get the draw away from home, a pretty good result for them. But in terms of their fantasy assets, only Lautaro Martinez really shone in that fixture. Fran Garcia was benched, and the same goes for the other 2 Man City players on my bench, Akanji and Doku. So I think those 4 players being benched was a massive disappointment. Doku was always a bit of a risk, but I think Akanji, Thuram and Fran Garcia, 3 players who started every single game this season, for them to be dropped in matchday 1 of UCL Fantasy was fairly unfortunate, but these things will happen, and it's already taking place in matchday 1. Imagine how it will be in matchday 6, where a lot of rotation tends to happen. But let me now go to my team selection for matchday 2, how my team looks like without using any transfers or chips, and at the very end I'll talk about my transfer plans for the upcoming deadline. I built my team specifically for matchday 1, and whilst it hasn't succeeded this time out, it's a very popular strategy I have done over the years, and then use a chip in matchday 2 and get out of that team situation, because there are a lot of fixture swings and tough fixtures in this upcoming deadline. You have Lewandowski away to Porto, who looked very impressive in matchday 1, Haaland, Doku and Akanji facing Leipzig away, and whilst I would expect Haaland and Akanji to start, the same cannot be said about Doku at this moment in time. Bellingham and Fran Garcia are away to Napoli, Simmons and Raum are facing Man City at home, so as you can see, a lot of tough fixtures, even some clashes between the likes of Di Maria, Dumfries, Thuram, and it's just not looking too good overall. So I think a chip is definitely needed in my situation, and it could be the same for a lot of you watching who went for a similar sort of structure, you know, targeting the likes of Leipzig for matchday 1. But naturally in matchday 2, you'd probably want to drift away from that, even though Leipzig can cause an upset to Man City, as they did in the home tie last year or last season, and they've also beaten the likes of Bayern Munich in the German Super Cup 3-0 in this calendar year, and they also drew to Bayern Munich over the weekend. So there's still some really good players and assets in here, and some very good teams covered, but with the fixtures in mind, I think a chip is probably essential, because if I don't go over chip and I use 2 free transfers, I think I will be falling rather behind and having a pretty poor or average start to this season's UCL Fantasy. My captains with this current setup would be Bellingham on the Tuesday, and on the Wednesday it's probably going to be Erling Haaland, but those aren't the best captain options in matchday 2 for me. I'm missing the likes of Harry Kane, Leroy Sané, and many other great assets who could really boost me up the ranks, and that's where the chips will come in. So in the next section, I'll be building a squad for one certain chip, and if you keep on watching, you'll find out which one it is. And in the deadline stream, I'll be confirming the chip I use, of course, because things change. We'll get injury updates tomorrow, and that could also play a part in my transfer plans. But as things stand, there is one chip I'm leaning towards, and it's a very popular strategy over the years. If you haven't already, joined the league, which you can see on the bottom left hand corner. There is also a link in the description below, and I want to see your thoughts in the comments section. Are you going to be using the Wildcard or the Limitless? I also put out a poll, and most of you are using the Limitless, which is quite surprising, but there is more of a shift this season towards a Wildcard, and that could also be a very popular strategy. But make sure to check out the chip strategy guide, which breaks down the chips in detail and the best times to use it, not just in the group stages, but also in the knockouts, which can be fairly underrated at times, particularly with the use of the wild card. But let's now build this 50-man squad, and I also encourage you to leave your thoughts on all of these selections and which players you would change. There are some doubts, so to speak, some players that could miss out, that have picked up knocks over the weekend and stuff like that. Things change very quickly, and that's why the Tuesday press conferences, which will happen during the deadline stream, can help us a lot in gathering even more information and finalising our 50-man squads. I have gone for David Raya and Oblak as my 2 goalkeepers. Things could change, of course, because Raya remains a risky pick. Ramsdale played very well in midweek against Brentford, kept a clean sheet there as well, but David Raya has kept 3 clean sheets in 4 games since becoming the #1 goalkeeper, and most of us would expect him to retain his spot in the Champions League. He kept the clean sheet against PSV Eindhoven, and he got a 7-pointer in matchday 1. As for Oblak, we know he's going to start, of course, but Atletico Madrid don't look that great defensively this season, and they conceded in the last minute to the Lazio goalkeeper, but Oblak still got a 4-pointer and made 7 saves. So I think the ceiling is definitely there, but Feyenoord isn't an easy team, and I know a lot of people will look at that fixture and maybe double up on Atletico Madrid defensively, and whilst I am tempted by Molina in the back line, I think I'd stick to 1 defensive coverage for Atletico, and Oblak is probably the best, depending on the chip you use, of course, but these 2 goalkeepers are the best in my opinion. Remember, you want to have 1 goalkeeper on the Tuesday and 1 on the Wednesday, and that's why Ryan Oblak definitely fit that criteria. The defense definitely isn't locked in, and as you can tell by the complexion of this squad, I am building a Limitless side, and it is quite similar to the best Limitless team video, but there are a few changes, of course, starting with the goalkeeper and building into the defense. I have gone for Alphonso Davies. I think on the Limitless, he is a great pick, and whilst Bayern Munich haven't been great defensively, and Copenhagen were quite surprising in Matchday 1, they should have won there at Galatasaray, but ended up crumbling at the end. I still think Bayern Munich are a different proposition entirely, and they will get the victory and possibly a clean sheet on top of it. Over the years, Davis is quite good with ball recoveries, but more so with assists, and he can get the occasional goal. So I think Alphonso Davies is the best way of covering Bayern Munich defensively on the Limitless. If I'm just playing a wild card, I'd go for Kim Min-jae. He's cheaper, and he also gets more ball recoveries in general. I have gone for Joao Cancelo. He was man of the match against Sevilla in a 1-0 victory, but Jules Koundé has been Barcelona's best defender and arguably best player so far this season. So he is still a consideration for me, but I wouldn't double up on Barcelona defensively away to Porto. That is their toughest game of the group stages. I've also gone for Ruben Dias. He's a ball recovery machine. Leipzig is a tough test, of course, but Ruben Dias is a fantastic UCL fantasy option, and not many defenders scored more points than him last season. As for Kieran Trippier, he is absolutely tearing it up in all competitions. He was fantastic against AC Milan in Matchday 1, and in the Premier League, he's just getting assist after assist. That's 4 assists in his last 2 games there, and he also got 8 ball recoveries against AC Milan. So you couple the ball recovery potential with the assist potential, he's on set pieces, and Kieran Trippier is just a fantastic option. He is facing Paris Saint-Germain though, but I would argue PSG aren't looking that great this season. They drew 0-0 over the weekend. And we all know what Mbappe is about. He is fixture proof, and he could absolutely tear Newcastle apart, especially with Sven Botman missing out, and Lascelles will play there in his place. But Trippier is just a great fantasy asset, and I would still recommend him in general. Only on the Limitless though, I don't think I'd have him in a wild card or also with free transfers. He is in the group of death after all, but his form in FPL cannot be ignored, and he also did extremely well in Matchday 1. The final defender is Denzel Dumfries. Not the best for ball recoveries, but he's got a lot of goals and assist potential. Benfica is a tough test, but I would give Inter Milan the edge, just like last season. Would I double up on Inter Milan defensively this week? Definitely not. But having one attacking wing back like DeMarco or Dumfries is the way to go. I prefer DeMarco overall in terms of ball recoveries, and he's also very good for assist threat, but Dumfries has more goal threat, and he also just plays more minutes. With DeMarco, he tends to be subbed out a bit earlier, and I don't like that at all. Sometimes he's subbed out before 60 minutes, and with Denzel Dumfries, you rarely have that same concern, so I have gone for the Dutchman instead. But overall, like I said, there are a few different players to go for. Maybe if I go for a different goalkeeper than Raya, I can go for Saliba in the back line instead of Kieran Trippier, and also Molina deserves an honourable mention. He also scored over the weekend against Cadiz, and I think he's a great attacking wing back for Atletico Madrid. He's 6 million, and he is perfect on the Limitless despite facing Feyenoord. So there's a lot of alternatives, of course, a lot of tough fixtures, which makes it difficult both on the Limitless and Wildcard to find the best 50-man squad, but overall I'm very happy with this defensive line. It seems strange building a Limitless squad without the likes of Vinicius Jr. as a midfielder, Kevin De Bruyne, who's currently injured, and Salah, but there are still some great options in here, and Leroy Sané is probably the best of the lot in Matchday 2 against Copenhagen. He scored against Man United and got the Man of the Match award. As I said before, I think he was very lucky with both, but he is a great fantasy asset in general, and he can score or assist against absolutely anybody, and apart from Harry Kane, I would argue that Leroy Sané has been Bayern Munich's best player so far this season, and he's also very underrated in general, I think, especially when it comes to the Champions League. As for Jude Bellingham, he's definitely not underrated. We all know how good he is. He is scoring late winners every single week, it seems, and he is absolutely crucial to Real Madrid, and they have gone top of La Liga after beating Girona, who were the league leaders at the time, and there was a comprehensive victory, and Jude Bellingham for me is a great asset. He's a jack of all trades, and despite facing Napoli away, I still would include him on the Limitless, I think. And as for Bruno Fernandes, he's a bit of a riskier pick because Man United are so inconsistent. They beat Crystal Palace in midweek 3-0, but then lost to them 1-0 in the Premier League. So it's very difficult, I think, with Bruno Fernandes or any Man United asset to justify their inclusion. But Bruno Fernandes, for me, has played well, regardless of Man United being so poor in general, and he's got the underlying numbers, I think. He's on penalties, a lot of different factors which make him a good UCL fantasy asset, especially in matchday 2 at home to Galatasaray. But would I double or triple up on Man United? Definitely not. The alternative to Bruno Fernandes for me is Casemiro, but that's mainly on a wild card or using a free transfer because he's got some goal threat. He scored and assisted against Crystal Palace midweek. He also scored a brace against Bayern Munich in matchday 1, and on top of that, Casemiro has the ball recovery potential, which you all saw at Real Madrid. I've also gone for a double up in Arsenal offensively with Odegaard and Saka, but Saka is the one to keep an eye out for because he picked up another knock against Bournemouth, and I think he'll play once again because Arteta just loves to play him, and he wants Saka to play absolutely every single minute if possible, and I think Saka will play in a must-win game for Arsenal against Lens. A win there will put the Gunners in a commanding position to top the group, and they can't afford to drop points, and Lens are now in a bit of good form. 2 wins on the bounce, and Arsenal cannot underestimate them at all. As for Odegaard, he got a 17-pointer in game week 7 of FPL against Bournemouth. He also took a penalty, and Saka is usually the number 1 penalty taker, but it looks like Saka is the home penalty taker and Odegaard is the away penalty taker because that's the way it's gone so far this season. And of course, the second penalty Arsenal got, they gave it to Kai Havertz, but maybe Saka would have gotten that one. We don't really know that yet. It could have been Odegaard. Who knows? Arsenal have us all guessing at this point. But ultimately, Saka is still the number 1 penalty taker for me and Odegaard is second. And by having both of them in your team, you cover both penalty takers for Arsenal, and they are the overwhelming favourites in this fixture. But be careful for Lens, they could prove some tough resistance, but a double or triple up in Arsenal is still viable on the Limitless wildcard or with free transfers. So that's my midfield 5. All that's left is the front 3. Probably the most difficult position I think to iron out other than the defenders because there are so many options as we always tend to have, and there are some tough fixtures for the likes of Lewandowski and Haaland, but ultimately some key assets have to be left out. I have to strongly emphasize this 50-man squad, and particularly the front 3, is not set in stone. The only player or players I think that will be locked in my team are the likes of Harry Kane and Leroy Sané, but the rest is malleable, and I just think Harry Kane is essential for matchday 2. But the likes of Erling Haaland and Lautaro Martinez aren't, because you've got Antoine Griezmann at home to Feyenoord, you've got Osimhen still, who's a good option despite facing Real Madrid, you've also got Angel Di Maria, who's a good option as always, and many others like Julian Alvarez, Gabriel Jesus against Lens. There is not a clear standout, I think, apart from Harry Kane in the forward position. As for Erling Haaland, he blanked against Leipzig away last time out, but he scored 5 goals in the return leg, so everyone forgot about that blank and poor performance away from home. Erling Haaland has been, I wouldn't say shaky, he's got 8 goals in 7 games after all in the Premier League, but there are some people questioning whether he's essential in FPL at this stage, and you can apply that same logic to UCL Fantasy. I don't think you need to have Erling Haaland per se, especially in matchday 2, but you want him in the likes of matchday 3 and 4 against Young Boys. I think he is essential as you can get in those particular match days, but in matchday 2, I think you can go without him and maybe go for a lower owned pick and go against a template, and that could be a great opportunity to rise the ranks. So Erling Haaland is not locked in for my Limitless team. On the wild card, I think I'd still have him just so I don't book in too many transfers, and I think in match days 3 and 4 he is essential. Harry Kane I think is just a fantastic option, period. He was going to be in my matchday 1 team, but I wanted to go for Lewandowski with a plum fixture, and Barcelona ended up scoring 5 goals, Bayern Munich scored 4, and that's the way it all turned out. Harry Kane's penalty did sway things his way, and Lautaro Martinez scored 4 goals off the bench, and that gave Inter Milan the victory, because before that they were struggling. It was 0-0, there was a deadlock, but Lautaro Martinez changed things, and he also scored in matchday 1. He is a very underrated striker, I think. He can be an erratic finisher. You've seen that in the World Cup, and I think recently for Argentina he has been very poor, but for club, ask any Inter Milan fan, he is absolutely gold to them, and he is their best player. He is so underrated. He's got so many attributes to his game. He can hold up the ball, and he's a good finisher when he's on his day and his confidence is high. So I think Lautaro Martinez is a very good pick against Benfica, and let's not forget he got the Man of the Match award in the home tie against Benfica last season in the quarterfinals, so he can score against Benfica. He's proven that before, and I would argue Benfica are weaker, especially with the absence of Antonio Silva due to a red card. So I think there's a great opportunity here for Inter Milan to take the 3 points and go top of their group, which isn't too easy, by the way. Real Sociedad, Salzburg and Benfica are all quite similar level, and Inter Milan are probably the best of the lot, but they need to get the victory here, and I think Lautaro Martinez will be absolutely essential to that win. As I've said before, this team is not locked in. Players like Griezmann could come in, even Molina. Saka could be sold if he is a doubt to start against Lens. And over the next day, I'll be keeping an eye out for injury updates and the press conferences, and everything will be covered in the deadline stream tomorrow, so be sure not to miss it. All that's left to discuss is the captaincy, and it looks much better all of a sudden, especially on the 3rd of October. I've got Saka, Odegaard, Bellingham, Sane, Bruno Fernandes, Lautaro Martinez, Harry Kane to choose from, but I would go for a Bayern Munich player, either Harry Kane or Leroy Sane, and my preference is with Harry Kane. And on the 4th of October, I'd still go for Erling Haaland, but he is not locked in this team, and his replacement could be my second captain on the Wednesday. So as always, be sure to have everyone on the Tuesday in your starting 11. If you saw the team selection portion of this video earlier, before I talked about this chip and this Limitless squad, I had some players on the 3rd of October on my bench. Make sure you don't do that. You want everyone on the 3rd of October in your starting 11, and then you can make substitutions during the substitution window. If you have any other comments to make, leave them in the comment section down below, and thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to the 300 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 21,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, and the UCL Fantasy League. All of the links are there. We've got some big communities, and we're trying to get to even bigger numbers in the future, and it's all thanks to your support. I'll see you very soon for more UCL Fantasy and FPL content. There's a lot to cover this week with the wildcard in Game Week 8 and also the deadline stream in UCL Fantasy. So make sure not to miss any single one of those uploads by subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell, which will also help us out in the algorithm. So take care, enjoy the football, and I'll see you next time.